Today's episode is brought to you by Henshaw Trailer Sales of Richland, Iowa, the Packwood Locker, Smithburg Auto of Fairfield, Iowa, and the Cedar Rapids Titans Arena football team. We've got a brand new guest. He's a crappie lure maker. Welcome to the program. Introduce yourself to our listeners, my friend.
My name's Tiny. I'm a hair jig designer out of Mobile, Alabama. I ship all over the United States and Canada. I do everything from 1/32 to 1/8 jigs, and I can do smaller or larger on custom orders. I can offer about anything that is on the market. Most of what I do is custom. I do have some line products.
Well, that's interesting. You're from Alabama. I have not fished in Alabama, but I've hog hunted in Alabama, and I was a truck driver for a lot of years, and I spent quite a bit of time down. It's one of my very favorite places. My wife and I love to go to the Gulf Shores, Alabama. It's beautiful, romantic weekend if you can get down there. But we're talking Iowa fishing here, and I'll tell you what, crappie fishing is huge in Iowa. Tell me what it is about crappie fishing in particular that you like.
When I got into the industry, I was living in my camper on Grenada Lake in North Mississippi, which is just an awesome crappie lake. And as I was there and I love fishing, it just was something that attracted me, I think, mainly because of the part of the country I was living in and the fact that you can catch 3 and 4 pound panfish in a lake. I had never seen that before because of the growing up in Alabama. They're not quite as big here, so it really attracted me. The size, the amount of people that did that type of fishing in that area, it just really caught on with me.
Well,
And it was real funny because I was my late wife and I were watching a guy out of Texas fish Lake Fork, and he was using hair jigs, and I had never fished with him before, and I saw how well they were working for him with crappie in that area. And I kind of started tying hair jigs on a bet with her that I could tie one that would actually catch fish, and that I was actually somebody who could get the equipment and start tying and do well within the industry. And so it's kind of started out on a bet. So I pulled up a jig head that I had in a tackle box, but I couldn't find, and some thread and different things, and I couldn't find any hair or feathers to work with. And I remember that day she was disabled, and I am also, but I remembered that day I had tied some purple streaks in her hair for her. And it was late in the evening, she was sleeping, and I couldn't find any hair or feathers. So while she was asleep, I took some scissors and cut a piece of that purple streak out of her hair. And that gave me a colored hair to work with to tie my hair jig. Of course, the snip of the scissors woke her up, and I got in really bad trouble for that. But that's how I got started. And that jig was actually used in a tournament that weekend on Grenada Lake and did really well. And so it was kind of a freak incident that kind of got me into the industry. And I've been doing it now for about 7 years, and I've had the opportunity to work with some fairly big names in the industry, guys such as Crappie Dan and Mueller. And I've tied for Steve Coleman and Ronnie Capps and Paul Alpers and a lot of your past national champions with some of the big trails.
Well, that's outstanding. I tell you, Tiny, I'm just getting to know you, and I know one thing about you already. You like to live dangerously. Snipping your wife's hair while she's asleep. Even I wouldn't do that and live through it, to be honest with you. But you have to have a special bond, and your wife might be a little more forgiving. But an interesting way to start. So let's talk about hair jigs. What's the difference between hair jigs and your typical crappie lure?
Well, your hair jigs, you basically, it's a tied on, glued on product to where when you tie it on, it's got to hold up really well because it's not as easy and as quick to change out as the soft plastic. And that's, I think, why so many guys tie soft plastics. But with the products and the glues and stuff that I use, I've had guys tell me they, guides that keep track of how many fish their clients catching things that have told me they've caught 800 to 1,000 fish on one jig and they were still using it. So it's all about the quality when you talk about a hair jig, because when you tie one on, it's got to be a good quality that's going to hold up well, so you're not retying all day, and it's got to be a jig that's going to catch a lot of fish, so that you're not changing out your bait or your rods or things of that nature too frequently. And I've had a lot of luck with the quality and the way my hair jigs hold up for my clients, and to where they don't have to tie unless they break off.
Well, you got a is it actual hair?
It is. I do use I've used human hair, of course. I've used bucktail, tip tail. I'll use anything my client wants. I honestly use a lot of synthetics because the synthetic hair holds up better. The synthetic hair has a thinner fiber and it has more movement in the water. And I've just had a whole lot better luck with synthetic hairs and been able to get a lot more different colors that I can tie. I can tie over 200 or 300 different color schemes, and so most of my product is either synthetic hair, or one of my biggest jigs that I sell more of all over the country has a white hackle feather tail. So I use a lot of white hackle feather and other colors of hackle feather.
Okay, tell us a little bit about how long you've been doing this.
I've been in the industry now about 7 years. I've uh, I've had my products fished all over the country in the most popular lakes all over North Mississippi, what they call the Big Four. I've got clients. The crappie boss fish my products on Red Rock there in Iowa on a frequent basis, and I've also had some clients that fish the Iowa Crappie Trail, and I'm talking to them now about hopefully being a new sponsor for them.
Well, when I was a little shaver, knee high to a grasshopper, my dad actually was working building the Red Rock Dam, so it's pretty close to where I live. It's great fishing. It's one of the best managed lakes in Iowa. Have you ever had a chance to get to Iowa or the Midwest and done any fishing up here?
I haven't. I do have, like I said, a lot of clients in the Midwest. I have clients that work with that guide or fish tournaments a lot on Lake of the Ozarks. Paul Oppers out of Missouri is a good friend of mine, and his fishing partner, the crappie boss Travis Lepley, fishes Red Rock and Lake of the Ozarks as a guide frequently, and a lot of clients in Iowa and I'm sorry, in Ohio. I picked up the wedge tail design because so many of the Ohio guys are familiar with that particular product. So I've started tying a lot of wedge tails for the Midwest fishermen, which took me to a new design that I'm doing. And I think right now I'm the only guy tying it on a commercial level as far as for sale. But I do a beaver tail that's cut out of the same product as the popular wedge tail, and it's really started to catch on as of late as a good product.
Well, Iowa fishing is a lot of bass fishing, a lot of crappie fishing. You catch a lot of bluegills. A lot of guys focus on the catfish. That's probably but we got walleye, and I like to fish for walleye. We got kind of building the trout up quite a bit here, but in Iowa, the crappie aren't going to get as big as they are in the South, because in the South they kind of grow for 12 months a year, and in Iowa, with the ice and everything, they grow about 9 months a year. So
Right.
they're not.
And with the ice fishing, I also offer jigs in the 1/80th and 100th of an ounce size too. They work really well for an ice fishing jig. And then,
Well, do you have a good story of someone that went ice fishing with some of your jigs and did well?
you know, I did have a client that was doing a lot of ice fishing in Michigan, and he was doing really well as a guide there. I don't really have a lot of clients in the Iowa area that's done well with ice fishing as of yet. I'd sure like to pick some up.
Well,
Um,
we'll change that right here and now. Get some of your product into this great state. There's Iowans and Alabamans have they're a lot alike, I think, and one of the things and ways that they're alike is they love the outdoors. We love to be outside. We love to be hunting and fishing and even mowing the grass and going to the ball games. We're not an indoor people, and I think Alabama people are quite the same. And they love their family and they love good food, and there's nothing better than a fish fry. That's the biggest thing around here. Is if people know you're having a fish fry, you better find a new parking lot because everybody.
Exactly. And I will mention too, you mentioned bass fishing. I offer an inline buzz bait that I designed, and also an inline spinner for the bass fishermen. I've got a chatterbait that's a totally different design from anything anybody else does that I worked on for 2 years and finally got it fishing right. And so I do offer a bass line. I just started offering a beetle spin for the brim and sunfish fishermen. It also works well with crappie.
Yeah,
I do all my own wire bends, put all the spoons on, so I make all those custom also.
well, this seems to be a passion project for you, something that you seem to really enjoy and put your heart and soul into it. When did I know you made a lure, and it worked, but when did it kind of kick into you that this is something that I really want to do and help other fishermen do well?
I think when I really started getting a lot of the guides and things that were in my area that started buying my products to fish them on such a regular basis, I realized that my product could grow across the country. And I've been lucky enough to fish to ship to a lot of different states and work with clients from Alabama to Ohio to Mississippi to Iowa, just really all over the United States, and every one of them have a lot of good luck. I mentioned that I tie a lot of white hackle feather. I've got a jig that I tie that I call Tiny's Terror, and it's a disco lime head with a white hackle feather tail, a white body, and a little bit of chartreuse flash. And that jig is the most popular jig I tie for guys all over the country. And no matter where they put it in the water, it catches big crappie. And so when I started having luck with that, such luck with that one color scheme that guys just really started buying a lot. That's when I started increasing my line to different products and different color schemes. My pink wedge tail is really popular in North Carolina. So as I had different color schemes catch on in different states, I find myself increasing my line to a point to where I've got something that'll work in any water in any state in the United States and work well.
Well, is fishing something that's been a lifelong passion of yours?
As I've always fished ever since I was a young child. Anything from saltwater to freshwater. Living down here in South Alabama, you almost have to enjoy saltwater fishing too because there's so much of it down here. And so when I moved back to South Alabama, I got into tying some saltwater hair jigs and things of that nature to keep up with the area that I live in. But I've always been into fishing my whole life, but I wasn't into it to the point I'm at now, really until I got to North Mississippi, where it was such a big passion for everybody.
Well, you're eating a place called Mike's Seafood there in uh, Gulf Shores, Alabama. That's my
I'm
wife and I's
familiar
favorite.
with it.
Yeah, it. I could eat fish every day. I think it's just. Did you know that when you eat fish, it fights depression?
I've never heard that, but maybe that's why I went off of my depression medication.
It's hard to be depressed when you're catching fish. That's for sure. Crappie in particular is my favorite fish to eat. I'd love to have a mess of bluegill and crappie and bass. Because I like to have a bite of this and a bite of that. But I love walleye and I love trout, but crappie is my very favorite. My wife, breads it and fries it, and She seems to be a miracle worker. I think she's like a little bit like Christ on the Sermon on the Mount, where she's taking just a few fish and feeding hundreds of people, it looks like to me, because when she starts cooking, I don't know, the neighbors show up my kids' friends show up, and it's like how they knew that as soon as they hear that fish hit the grease, they're coming. It's a great thing. Tell me a story, a family story about maybe you and your dad went fishing, or you and your grandpa, or maybe you and your sons or something went fishing. Tell me a family story about you and how that brought your family together, maybe.
Well, my late wife and I both became disabled around the same point of time in our lives. We both ended up with leg amputations within a couple of years apart. We were living in just north of Gulfport, Mississippi at the time, and I remember asking her one day after we become disabled what she wanted to be able to do together, something that would help us to battle our disability and something that we could do and enjoy in life. And I asked her one day, I said, what, if you could do anything right now, that what would it be? And she said, I want to move. And I said, you want to move? She said, yeah. I said, where do you want to move to? She said, I want to move somewhere where I can fish every day. And so that very day, I put the house on the market. And that's when we ended up in the Grenada Lake, Mississippi area. And we were actually living at Enid Lake, which is one of the big four at this time, in a camper. And we began to go down to this handicap pier there on the lake. I'm talking, we went every day of the week. And there were times we'd go to fish in the evening time, and we'd get there at 8 o'clock, and we'd stay there for 2 days, and just and never leave the pier for a couple of days. We'd take a nap in the van or whatever, and take turns taking naps in the van or whatever throughout that period. But that was the most relaxing thing, that we would sit there on our handicap scooter there on the pier and just fish for hours upon hours and hours. And I remember they have fish cleaning stations there at the lakes there. And I remember I had a cooler sitting up at the cleaning station full of bluegill. And we were sitting there fishing, still fishing with that cooler of bluegill sitting up at the cleaning station on ice. And one of the Corps of Engineer Rangers came by, and I saw him stop and look in my cooler. So I rolled up there on my scooter, and he asked me, he said, where did you catch these bluegill? And I said, I caught him right here off this pier. And he got a set of scales out of his truck and started weighing those bluegill. And they were averaging a pound and a half, 2 pounds apiece.
Wow, that's excellent.
And he said, he said, I have never seen bluegill this many of this size caught on this lake before. And we had been there, I'm talking hours, and that was just something we did on a daily basis once we moved to that part of the country. We'd go and we'd fish for 2 days straight and never go back to the camper. And it was just something that I think brought us together as a whole. Even though we were both had the disabilities, it was something that we could do, and we could sit there and just enjoy each other's company. And mothers would bring their kids down there to fish while we were sitting there, but they had never took them fishing before, and the equipment they had was stuff that they had stopped at Walmart and bought on their way over there. So I'd go over there and sit with the child, and string their new fishing pole for them, and put their hooks on for them, and help them, show them how to bait the hooks. And the parent, mother or father, whoever it was that didn't know anything about fishing, would just sit there and watch. And it just really gave me an opportunity to become a part of the community, as we were still fairly new up there. And it gave us a chance to grow together. It gave us a chance to meet new people and gain new friends and become intricate part of the community, working with these children that would come down there to learn how to fish. And to me, there's nothing better in the world than to sit and teach a young person how to fish, and get young people involved in the industry at a young age. It it was just an amazing opportunity for us.
Well, the Round Guy Radio celebrates anybody that helps young people out. You know, we cover a lot of high school basketball, and we tell the coaches, you know, that no man becomes a good man without some instruction from other good men. You know, it takes a good man to make a good man, and that's kind of the core mission of Round Guy Radio, is to kind of celebrate the men that do that and help. And I want to let the world know there's still good men. There's still lots of good men in Alabama. There's great men in Iowa. I don't know about California and New York, but there's a lot of good men. Probably not many in Washington, D.C., but in the South and the Midwest in particular, you can still find a really good man and a really good family. Well, if if you're
I was
listening to
born
this,
in Kansas City, so I'm a
oh,
Midwesterner too.
yeah,
So
he's well, my brother-in-law lives in Olathe, Kansas. It's a suburb of there, and I'm a big Royals fan, so I kind of love it down there. Kind of a friendly, one of the more friendly cities, but I try to stay someplace that don't have any traffic, and I'm doing pretty well here in Southeast Iowa. If they want to get, if one of our listeners wants to get a hold of one of these lures that you got, or check out your catalog, is there a website? Is there a phone number? Is there a Facebook page? How can we follow your products here in Iowa and elsewhere? We got people in Missouri. I was in Missouri yesterday. We got a lot of people, you know, on the northern side of Missouri and on the eastern side of Illinois. You know, anything along the Mississippi River. And there's a lot of crappie fishermen up in there. We do pretty well in those areas. But how do we get a hold of your products and a catalog of what you got?
well, they can find me on Facebook at Tiny's Hand Tied Hair Jigs. I don't have a web page right now, but they can get me on Facebook at Tiny's Hand Tied Hair Jigs. They can send me a text or call me. I love text messages and phone calls. So they can get me at 662-710-3002. And I never sleep, so they can contact me any time of the day or night.
Uh,
I'm always sitting at my vise. So they can catch me on Facebook, like I said, at Tiny's Hand Tied Hair Jigs, or call or text me at 662-710-3002 at any point and place orders. But I put a lot of my products on my Facebook page. I also get people a lot of times to send me pictures of their favorite soft plastic, and I will emulate a hair jig in the color schemes of their favorite soft plastic. Or if they've got a hair jig that they've fished and they love it and they can't find it, they can send me a picture of it, and I'll custom tie them something in those same color schemes. I do a lot of custom work.
so you can customize the thing, or you can give them an idea of what you want, and you can come up with that. What do you have, like a tool shop there in your house? I mean, it seems like to me you got to have like a professional setup to make all this stuff.
Yeah, I've got an area in my home. I've got a vise set up, and I've got all my hair and feathers and threads and body chenilles and flashes. And like I said at the beginning, I can normally do any of 200 or 300 different color schemes that I've done over the years. So I can pretty much tie anything anybody wants.
Well, that is outstanding. Now, you said you had a way maybe our offers could, or our listeners could win a crappie lure or something.
Yeah, I do a lot of orders by the dozen, and I normally get $35 a dozen. And normally, if somebody calls me and they want to order a dozen of, say, 5 different color schemes, I usually put together a lot of 5 dozen orders. And normally, a regular price 5 dozen hair jigs cost $175. If somebody contacts me and tells me they heard me on
Round Guy Radio.
around around my radio, I'll do a order of 5 dozen hair jigs in whatever color schemes they want. I'll tie them custom for them, and I'll do an order of 5 dozen hair jigs for $100. That's $75 off the regular price.
Well, that's pretty outstanding. Well, I don't know if I got a lot more questions for you. Is there anything we didn't get to talk about that you wanted to talk about?
I think we covered just about everything.
Well, I sure enjoyed talking to you, Tiny, and I'm going to be looking forward to trying out some of your lures. I am a avid crappie fisherman, and I did it with my dad, and now I do it with my grandkids. And sometimes my dad's still around. He comes down, and I got a 2-year-old and a 14-year-old grandkid, and he just like when I was a boy, he comes right out there and has the patience like you do, and helps them along and helps them learn their way, and then we all get together and have a big old fry at the end of the day, and it's a beautiful thing and a great way to spend some time with your family. And there's not a lot of activities you can do that also involves having supper. So it's a great opportunity. Thanks for talking to our people here in Iowa. They really appreciate what you do and the story that you've got. So thanks for taking some time to be with us today.
I appreciate you talking to me.
Okay, thanks for calling in.